This is CBC Winnipeg News.
Good evening. Thanks for joining us. Frontline healthcare workers are speaking out over issues with IV pumps used across the province. The pumps have been the subject of recalls, and the Manitoba Nurses Union wants them replaced. As CBC's Josh Crabb reports, the province's Cancer Authority has already made some changes.
Patients receiving chemotherapy are now getting their cancer-fighting drugs from different equipment after issues recently came to light. In a memo obtained by CBC News, Cancer Care Manitoba says it's stopping the use of B-Braun Cytoset IV pump tubing and switching to a different type of tube. The memo says over the past year, there have been increased risks and concerns brought forward, including leaking and potentially hazardous drug spills with the Cytoset tubes, which are specifically for chemotherapy. According to Shared Health, B-Braun signed a contract to provide Manitoba health facilities, including cancer care, with IV pumps and accessories. A type of the company's infusion pumps themselves are also under scrutiny. They've been subject to recalls. One issue involved a sensor that needed to be replaced. Another was malfunctioning valves. Manitoba Nurses Union President Darlene Jackson says members are concerned the pump issues could impact the dosage patients receive. B-Braun says it has sent instructions and clinical educators to Manitoba to help frontline workers to deal with the issues with workarounds. Jackson says there are still problems.
I think when you have this many problems and this many sort of add-ons to get around those problems, that I think we need to be looking at a pump that is safe, that the staff feel comfortable working with.
Health Canada has received 259 reports over the past 5 years related to the recalled pumps. Of those, 243 came from Manitoba. In total, the reports involved 1 death and 16 cases of serious health deterioration. Manitoba's health minister says the government is aware of the issues. Uzoma Asaguera says the priority is making sure the pumps work properly. A decision about replacing the equipment across the province hasn't been made.
We are certainly open to alternatives. At this time, we're really focused on supporting the work that's being done to address the ongoing concerns.
B-Braun says the health facilities that have implemented the company's recommendations have resolved issues with the pumps, and those that haven't have been resistant to implement solutions. Shared Health says it's working with the company to address the issues raised by staff. Josh Crabb, CBC News, Winnipeg.
Well, it was another day of on and off again tariff threats from Donald Trump. First came a vow of 50% duties on steel and aluminum Wednesday, then indications that would be paused. Free trade talks are now planned in Washington between American officials, Ontario Premier Doug Ford and Federal Finance Minister Dominic LeBlanc. In exchange, Ford has suspended on a 25% surcharge on electricity sold to the U.S. Ford called for cooler heads to prevail in the U.S. trade war against Canada. The Ontario Premier has also suggested the province could cut off the energy it supplies to the U.S. completely if tariffs escalated. Now, the ongoing changes and threats have people on edge, nowhere more than those who work or rely on those industries, like many in Selkirk. The CBC's Mike Arsenault shows you why.
The fan belt at Gerdau Steel Mill in Selkirk is running now, but there's worry it could pause because of U.S. tariffs on steel. An unsettling possibility for Erin Rudnitsky. She says tariffs are hurting everyday workers.
I have friends that work in the industry and they're afraid for their jobs. They're afraid that they won't be able to feed their families. And that's a huge concern as a Canadian.
The on-again, off-again U.S. decision to slap a 25 or 50% tariff on Canadian steel and aluminum has the whole industry rattled, especially in Selkirk, where Gerdau is the city's major employer.
About 10,000 people live here in Selkirk, and the mayor says well over 500 of them work in the steel and aluminum industry. The mayor says more than 70% of the steel produced here goes to the United States.
The United Steelworkers Union represents 7,500 members in Manitoba. The director for Western Canada says there's anger, frustration, and fear among members who are uncertain about their future.
What we're really working hard on is to work with our with the companies that employ our members, work with government so that there's not the kind of impact that people fear where there's places closing down and layoffs.
Scott Lunny says it's disappointing that the President of the United States is threatening the economy of Canadians.
But also of Americans. I mean, there's the steel industry, aluminum industry are very integrated between the Canada and the United States, and it's going to have huge impact on both sides of the border.
Canadian manufacturers and exporters represents 2,500 manufacturers across Canada. It says even talk of slowdowns or job loss has a far-reaching impact.
What does it mean to the town of Selkirk and surrounding areas if hundreds of people, are on work share or laid off, et cetera? What does that mean to the restaurant industry, the hospitality industry?
Terry Shaw says CME is currently in Washington, D.C. with a delegation in hopes to prevent tariffs from being implemented long-term.
I would be very surprised if there's widespread support for these tariffs from those on the U.S. side of the border.
Back in Selkirk, there's not a lot of support for the tariffs either.
I think having a free trade agreement and keeping businesses open is what we need as everyday people.
The mayor of Selkirk says he worked through the tariffs implemented in 2018 and avoided layoffs. He says the mill has been running for more than 100 years and he hopes it's around for another 100. Mike Arsenault, CBC News, Selkirk.
Well, have you ever found yourself racing to cross the street, running out of time as that crosswalk sign starts flashing and the lights are about to change? Well, now people will get a head start at nearly 100 intersections around downtown. CBC's Cameron McLean has more.
First, a 5-second head start for pedestrians. Then, a green light for cars. The City of Winnipeg has changed the timing of pedestrian signals at dozens of intersections downtown. It hopes giving people on foot more time will reduce collisions between drivers and pedestrians. Public Works Chair Janice Luke says it's part of efforts to protect vulnerable road users.
I mean, it's people's lives, it's medical bills, it's time off work, there's many factors if someone's injured that it's a domino effect to many other areas and many other costs to society.
The city started testing out the leading pedestrian indicators at a small number of intersections last year, and the early results show promise. A 13% reduction in collisions and a 35% reduction in near misses. Luke's calls those results significant.
If you've got downtown where there's a lot of people, there's a lot of intersections, if we can reduce collisions by 13% by changing the time, allowing pedestrians to get a head start on the intersection, that's very positive.
After an initial rollout at 30 intersections last year, the city has now changed the timing of pedestrian signals at 91 intersections across downtown. A city report said the change required no extra money. One road safety advocate praised the city's decision, but says more needs to be done.
We'd really view this as, just the dangling low-hanging fruit. This is kind of the easiest, cheapest thing that you can do to really see an improvement, especially in neighborhoods like the downtown.
Other city initiatives to improve road safety include a pilot project testing out lower speed limits in 4 neighborhoods. A report on the results of that pilot is due later this spring. Cameron McLean, CBC News, Winnipeg.
Workers at 3 child and family services agencies may go on strike if a tentative agreement can't be reached with their employers. The MGEU has issued a 2-week strike notice to Métis Child, Family and Community Services, Michif Child and Family Services, and Southeast Child and Family Services. It includes roughly 500 workers from admin staff and social services to family support and youth care workers. The union wants a similar contract to what other civil services received last year, which was a 4-year, 14% wage increase. They could start walking the picket line March 25th. 3 people were rushed to hospital in unstable condition after a fire in an apartment building last night. Emergency crews were called to the 400 block of Langevin just before 8:30. Everyone got out on their own. The city was on scene providing temporary support for displaced residents and their pets. Weather specialist Riley Laychuk in now. And Riley, it felt like another blast of winter today.
Expect the same pattern, Brittany. On again, off again, some cloud cover, some flurries, some clearing. rinse and repeat. I know we're going to get tired of this by the end of the week, but here we go. So -8, the best we did in Winnipeg today. That cloud cover held us back just a little bit temperature-wise throughout the day today. -6 in Brandon, -3 in Melita this afternoon, and certainly some of that colder air still into parts of northern Manitoba, -13 in Thompson, -16 in Lynn Lake. So there's that cloud cover that rolled in earlier this afternoon across the south. Out of this, a few flurries, particularly the further west you go, places like Verdon through Deloraine, Boissevain, picking up a little bit of light snow throughout the afternoon hours today. I think we do have a chance of some flurries tonight in Winnipeg, so don't be surprised if you wake up to a dusting of snow on your car. Temperature really doesn't go anywhere overnight. -8 first thing in the morning, a mainly cloudy sky, and back to a mix of sun and clouds again by the afternoon, Brittany, +3. And then we'll start to get some more cloud cover in again. I'll have more on that when I come back.
I want to stay with the +3.
Yeah, me too.
Thanks, Riley. One online retail giant has halted shipments of machetes to Manitoba addresses. More on the provincial plea that sparked the change after the break. Stay with us. Buying a machete here in Manitoba just got more difficult. A big online retailer has pulled machetes off its website following the wishes of Manitoba's government. We're joined by the CBC's Ian Fraze in our newsroom. So, Ian, what's happening?
Well, Amazon has stopped selling machetes to anyone with a Manitoba shipping address. Now, a law around the sales of machetes took effect in December, meaning only adults with photo ID could buy them. But the law only impacts people who buy machetes in-store, not online. That meant Amazon and Walmart are places where you could buy machetes without any restrictions. Now, the province asked online retailers months ago to follow the intent of this law. Some did, some did not. Now Amazon says it too will follow suit. Justice Minister Matt Wiebe is grateful.
We know the violent crimes that are being committed with them, and to their credit, we reached out to them. They've now responded, and they've indicated that they are willing to restrict the sale of these weapons here in the province of Manitoba.
Amazon made this decision to pull machetes 1 week after CBC News reported on how easy it was to buy machetes on Amazon and Walmart's websites.
So, Ian, meanwhile, the government introduced a bill that clarifies who's responsible for tenants' costs if they're evicted because of maintenance issues. Now, what exactly is changing?
Well, you may recall what happened with Birchwood Terrace. The city ordered the St. James apartment complex to be evacuated because of structural issues. That left tenants wondering where to go and who would pay for them. At first, the city and the Red Cross covered the costs, but then the province took over. Meanwhile, the building owner, they don't have to spend any money. This bill, if it passes, would change that. Mintu Sandhu is the Minister for Public Service Delivery. He says if tenants are forced out, landlords must cover rent and moving costs.
Well, this is in case they are neglecting their responsibility. In case they haven't done their proper due diligence to protect the renters, to protect their buildings.
Ladco Companies is the owner of Birchwood Terrace. They did not respond to our request for comment. Tenants have been back in the building since December. Brittany.
All right. Thank you, Ian. That's CBC's Ian Fraze. Ottawa is kicking in tens of millions in more funding to help get people off the streets. It's one more step in not only finding housing for the city's most vulnerable, but towards ending chronic homelessness. CBC's Zubina Ahmed reports.
Solving the housing crisis is a Team Canada approach.
Winnipeg South Centre MP Ben Carr says the federal government will provide an additional $27.3 million to end homelessness in Winnipeg. The funds come through the designated communities and Indigenous homelessness streams of the national strategy.
It's going to bring the total to $174.8 million from 2019-2020, which of course has already been underway, through to 2027-28.
Carr says eliminating chronic homelessness takes a coordinated effort.
The Government of Canada is committed on an ongoing basis to working with communities and partners, which include veterans organizations, Indigenous communities and leaders, and housing providers to achieve this important goal.
Jason Whitford, the CEO of End Homelessness Winnipeg, says housing is about providing belonging, safety, dignity, and reconciliation. He says Indigenous people are the most affected when it comes to homelessness.
Although Indigenous people make only 14% of our overall population, we have the unfortunate reality that more than 75% are Indigenous that are experiencing houselessness.
Whitford says the funding will help service providers offer housing in urban, Indigenous and remote communities. Zubina Ahmed, CBC News, Winnipeg.
The Archdiocese of St. Boniface is facing another lawsuit alleging sexual assault by a former priest. The lawsuit says the sexual assaults happened at the church in Somerset in the 1970s. It names now deceased priest René Touchette as the attacker. The plaintiff alleges it started when he was around 13 and continued until he was 21. The lawsuit says Touchette was convicted of sexual assault against the plaintiff and other victims in the area in 1993. He says he suffered post-traumatic stress, humiliation, and negative impacts on family and social relationships because of the incidents. The allegations have not been tested in court, and no statement of defense has been filed yet. Riley's back, and I hope our viewers like amusement parks, because we are back on Riley's Weather roller coaster.
Oh boy, are we ever. And not just the temperatures, but the sky conditions as well. Particularly on a day like today when we saw, some clearing this morning, back to some cloud cover, maybe some flurries, rinse and repeat down the week we go. So.
All over the map.
Oh yeah, get ready, buckle up everyone. We'll talk temperatures first because this is going to have a major play in what some of this precipitation that we're looking at falls as. So here's the 10-day temperature trend that one forecast model that is looking at our temperatures. So we are looking at temperatures the next several days above seasonal, so jumping up to +3 tomorrow. And then look at what happens. This is the indication of a cold front that dives our temperatures as we get Friday into Saturday, staying below seasonal much of next week. And by about the 21st, 22nd, we're back up above seasonal again. So yeah, get ready for some freeze thaw to happen over the next few weeks here. So looking at Futurecast, you can see that we do have, as we get into Tuesday, into the evening hours tonight at least, a chance of a few flurries across southern Manitoba, really anywhere south of the Trans-Canada is your best indication for some flurries. Maybe we see a dusting here in Winnipeg first thing in the morning, so don't be surprised if you see a little bit of snow on the car first thing in the morning. Into Wednesday, another weak disturbance pushes across central Manitoba, the Pas, Flin Flon, Grand Rapids into Norway House. Get a dusting of snow. Behind that, some clearing, so a mix of sun and clouds into Winnipeg tomorrow. And then as we get into Wednesday, into Thursday morning, we see another system that will roll across southern Manitoba. And this one coming with a little bit of snow, a little bit of rain, temperature dependent, because again, we'll be close to the freezing mark, particularly as we get into some of those daytime temperatures. So Thursday morning, I've got Winnipeg at least at a slight chance of a few flurries, but again, we could see a dusting of snow overnight into Thursday morning. Rinse and repeat again, and we're looking at another system making its way in. This one packing a little bit more of a punch as we get Friday into Saturday. I've widened the map out so you can see here an area of low pressure in Saskatchewan. Warm front attached, so this is going to warm temperatures as we get into Friday and then allow things to drop as this makes its way further to the east as it makes its way into Manitoba. Again, the best chance for some accumulating snow across central Manitoba, really anywhere from Dauphin north. So we're looking at some snow coming our way toward the weekend once again. As we get over the next 24 hours, like I showed you earlier, maybe a dusting to a few centimeters. The further south you are, the better likelihood that we'll see a couple of flurries overnight into the morning hours. Into Wednesday and Thursday, we get ourselves back onto the warm side of the jet stream. That's going to allow some of those temperatures to really drive up as we get into the day on Thursday, and then that cold front sweeps through and a ridge starts to form into the jet stream. So that's really going to bring those temperatures back towards seasonal and below seasonal in some cases as we get toward the weekend. So +3 tomorrow, Brittany, +4s for Thursday, Friday, and then below seasonal into the weekend.
Thanks, Riley.
You're welcome.
Well, calling all storytellers, CBC News is hiring up to 30 reporters to work in 23 underserved communities across the country, and we want to hear from you. In Manitoba, this role will be based in Steinbach, focused on broadening our coverage across all our platforms. Applications are now being accepted at cbc.ca/workwithus. Stay with us. We have much more straight ahead. As we mentioned earlier, steel and aluminum tariffs are set to take effect tomorrow. But earlier today, the U.S. president was firing off significant threats, this time suggesting further hiking steel and aluminum levies, sparking yet another dizzying day of unclear policies. The CBC's Katie Simpson reports from Washington.
Canada will face a 25% steel and aluminum tariff starting Wednesday after a roller coaster of a day with threats and policies changing quickly. It started with the U.S. president threatening to double steel and aluminum tariffs on Canada to 50%. The White House says Donald Trump was angry with part of Canada's tariff retaliation plan, specifically the 25% surcharge Ontario placed on energy powering New York, Michigan, and Minnesota, and Ontario Premier Doug Ford's threats to cut off energy altogether.
There would be grave consequences imposed on Canada if they think about shutting off electricity. Canada would be very wise not to shut off electricity for the American people, and we hope that that does not happen.
Not long after the White House briefing, Premier Ford announced he would suspend the energy surcharge after a phone call with U.S. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick. Ford described the call as productive, saying he'd been invited to meetings at the White House later this week. Trump himself then suggested he may ease up on his new threats against Canadian steel and aluminum.
The Ontario Premier calling you and giving you his decision about the electricity surcharge, and you said you were pleased about that. Will you make a different decision now about the tariffs on Canada? Will you reduce it?
At that, but probably so, yeah. He was a gentleman.
Just to be clear, sir, the 50%, is that going to go into effect on Canada or not?
Which one?
The 50% tariffs?
I'll let you know about it. Yeah, okay. I'll let you. But I appreciated his call. I thought it was nice.
The White House then confirmed it would proceed with its original tariff threat, 25% on steel and aluminum, no exceptions. Canadian officials are expected to respond Wednesday. A retaliation plan is being finalized, the size and scope of counter tariffs and other measures to be revealed then. Katie Simpson, CBC News, Washington.
Now, Canadian businesses and workers are bracing for the impact of those U.S. tariffs. Nisha Patel now with their reaction.
Rahim Molu is preparing for tough weeks ahead.
The situation is worrying. It definitely keeps me up at night.
His small family-run business makes steel window wells and garden beds. Just the threat of tariffs has already had an impact.
All of our American distributors have canceled their orders with us. I don't think we'll ever get all of that business back.
U.S. President Donald Trump says starting Wednesday, tariffs may be imposed on steel and aluminum imported from Canada. The rate seems to target raw materials as well as finished metal products.
So that really wipes out any opportunity to continue a profitable business into the United States. So we have to look at that very, very closely.
Canada exports more than 90% of its steel and aluminum south of the border. While companies are trying to come up with backup plans, in the short term, tariffs could be deeply damaging.
We're talking about developing new markets, increasing productivity, and all those things. But, I mean, that will take months, if not years.
When Donald Trump hit steel and aluminum with tariffs back in 2018, Canadian exports sank and metal prices rose. It lasted for about a year, but disrupted other sectors too, from manufacturing to construction.
This is one of those costs that can cascade over time. And not just in Canada, but also south of the border.
Ontario and Quebec will likely bear the brunt of these latest tariffs. With tens of thousands of jobs tied to the industries, workers are on edge.
We're afraid of job loss. When job loss happens, even at one company, there's always a cascading effect.
Rahim Molu says he's changed his business plan entirely, canceling any plans to expand to the U.S.
Even if miraculously a new deal was reached overnight, it's not like flipping a light switch. Our American distributors aren't going to be rushing to do business with us.
Whatever tomorrow brings, for him, the damage has already been done. Nisha Patel, CBC News, Toronto.
The U.S. says it's resuming military aid and intelligence sharing with Ukraine immediately. The about-face comes after talks between U.S. and Ukrainian officials in Saudi Arabia aimed at ending Russia's war against Ukraine. Kyiv also says it's open to a U.S. ceasefire proposal, subject to approval from the Kremlin. Briar Stewart reports.
The high-stakes talks were billed as a step towards peace and also a chance for the relationship between Washington and Kyiv to be repaired. And after hours of meetings Tuesday, dramatic progress on both fronts, with the U.S. saying that Ukraine has agreed to a 30-day interim ceasefire.
So the shooting will stop, the killing will stop, the dying will stop, and the talks can begin about how to end this war permanently in a way that's acceptable and enduring for both sides.
But Russia still has to agree. And a few hours before the talks began, Ukraine sent a message. Dozens of drones attacked Moscow and the surrounding area. At least 3 were killed. We understood there was a war, said this woman, but we didn't properly realize it until now.
You're not in a good position. You don't have the cards right now.
It was less than 2 weeks ago that this fractious White House meeting between the presidents from U.S. and Ukraine led to Washington halting military aid and curbing the sharing of intelligence. Now officials say both are back on.
Today, we demonstrated to all the world that we want a peace.
But even if Russia agrees to an interim ceasefire, getting a peace agreement will be exceedingly difficult.
It's going to be very hard to build any kind of trust or confidence between Russia and Ukraine.
Walter Kemp is a security expert from Canada, but now based in Austria. He's part of a group strategizing how a deal could work.
The challenge is to actually get into the nitty-gritty of what the ceasefire means, how it works, and also how it's implemented. There's no point in having a ceasefire that's then broken the next day.
American officials say the ball is now in Russia's court. Steve Witkoff, a special envoy for the Trump administration, will be in Moscow this week. And the U.S. Secretary of State says if Russia rejects the deal, it will be clear just what the impediment is to peace. Briar Stewart, CBC News, London.
Former Philippine President Rodrigo Duterte has been arrested on a warrant from the International Criminal Court. He was seized in Manila after arriving on a flight. The global court is charging the 79-year-old of crimes against humanity over a deadly anti-drug crackdown he oversaw during his term. Thousands of people died. Critics say authorities carried out extrajudicial killings. Duterte has always insisted police were told to kill only in self-defense. He unilaterally withdrew the Philippines from the ICC treaty in 2019 and maintains it now has no jurisdiction. UK police have arrested a man on suspicion of gross negligence and manslaughter in connection with yesterday's ship collision in the North Sea. The 59-year-old, who has not been named, has not been charged and remains in custody. This as UK officials work to find out what happened after a cargo ship struck a tanker carrying jet fuel for the U.S. military off eastern England. The collision set both vessels ablaze and sent jet fuel from a ruptured tank pouring into the sea. One sailor remains missing and is presumed dead. 36 other crew members survived. Palestinians in Gaza could be out of clean drinking water in a matter of days after Israel cut off its electricity supply to the territory. It's one of the tactics Israel is using to apply pressure on Hamas to free its remaining hostages. And as CBC's Crystal Gamansing reports, this could just be the beginning.
Access to clean drinking water for hundreds of thousands in Gaza will become increasingly challenging after Israel decided to cut off power to the South Gaza desalination plant in Deir al-Balah. Now, this is as close as we can get. Western journalists are not allowed inside Gaza. However, working with a freelance videographer, Mohammed, we are able to show the latest pictures of that plant in Deir al-Balah. According to the deputy director of Coastal Water Utility, the production has been greatly reduced, going from about 88,000 cubic meters of water being produced per day to roughly 3,000 cubic meters of water being produced per day. The challenge isn't just to access clean water, but food and supplies as well. More than a week ago, Israel shut down the borders to aid. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said they will use all means to pressure Hamas to extend the current ceasefire and release all of the hostages. There are talks going on when it comes to trying to move forward with the ceasefire talks. Israel's former ambassador to the U.S., Michael Orn, says Israel is in a difficult position considering how much people are demanding that all of the hostages be returned immediately.
We've now had 11 days of ceasefire without Hamas having to pay any price for the ceasefire. And so that's not a good situation either. It's 11 days in which those hostages continue to suffer, unspeakable horrors. So that's not an advantageous position for Israel either. And Netanyahu is going to be under increasing pressure within his own coalition to do something.
Things have been relatively peaceful, but there are ongoing sporadic military operations. Israel Defense Forces did confirm that earlier today there was an airstrike in the Nazarene corridor. That's an area that sort of divides the north and the south. They say individuals were threatening soldiers in that area. Unconfirmed reports say that there were at least 6 individuals killed in that strike. Crystal Gamansing, CBC News, Sderot, Israel.
It's been 5 years since the World Health Organization declared COVID-19 a global pandemic. The declaration kick-started a bevy of policies that transformed the way Canadians lived for years. It followed months of rapid spread of the virus, which forced mass lockdowns. The declaration triggered the shutdown of schools and offices. Travel limits and bans on social gatherings were put in place, and public health officials became household names as Canadians sought to keep up with the latest advice with each new wave. The global COVID-19 health emergency was lifted in May 2023. A U.S. crackdown on illegal immigration will affect many Canadian snowbirds who drive across the border. Why you may be forced to get fingerprinted or face charges. That's ahead. President Donald Trump's administration is preparing a new travel rule. Canadians planning to stay in the country for more than 30 days will need to register their information with the U.S. government and could have to submit to fingerprinting. Now, the draft rule is set to take effect April 11th. One Winnipeg immigration lawyer says it could impact where Canadian snowbirds spend their winters.
Any Canadian that's going down to the United States, this rule, once it's fully implemented, assuming it's going to be fully implemented, because we've seen things change back and forth with the American administration, requires registration if you're staying in the United States for more than 30 days. So it's not going to affect a Canadian traveler who's going down for a short trip. It's not going to affect anyone who's going down for an extended trip if you're going down for work or study, because most of those individuals have to apply well in advance or at the border for a status, and they'll get some documentation that shows that they're registered. So it's really going to be looking at individuals who will be going down for tourism purposes for extended periods of time.
So does that mean, I'm going to interject there for a second, because if you rent or if you own, or there's distinctions there?
It appears to be with respect to individuals who will be in the United States. So regardless of purpose. So the two groups that would catch would be people that would be staying for more than 30 days, either for tourism or business purposes, who aren't registered. One of the ways that you can check if you're registered, because sometimes it's almost automatic, or it's not quite automatic, but you don't actually know that they've done it, but you can find out that they've done it, especially if they've gotten your passport, is you can check if you have what's called an I-94. There's an online tool that the U.S. government has for that. You enter your passport information, and if it appears that they've issued you an I-94 when you go through that, then you know that you've been registered. If there is no I-94, so you enter your information and nothing pops up, then you know that you haven't been.
Who's registering you, and do you have to ask for that?
Well, so if you're going down for a business purpose, normally the process of making that application will automatically cause you to be registered one way or the other. If you're going down as an international student, normally that process will also cause you to be registered. It's when you're going down as a tourist, or if you're going down as a business visitor, so not someone who's going to be working there necessarily regularly, but maybe a short-term status that doesn't require the full work permit type of thing, then sometimes you can be registered and sometimes you won't be. But this requirement requires you to be fingerprinted as well. So you're going to know if your fingerprints were taken. I mean, it's not the old days when you've got ink on paper. It's the electronic stuff. And so you'll know that if you haven't been fingerprinted, then you've likely haven't been registered.
Now, as I mentioned in the introduction, though, the if you're past 30 days, you have to be re-registered. So if someone's thinking to themselves, okay, hang on a minute, we're going down for a couple of months, maybe you have a timeshare, or maybe you are a snowbird, or maybe you have a business travel. What should people know once they're down there? Because you have to register again after 30 days?
Well, that's not the way I understand it. But again, the full implementation isn't there yet. What the rule was talking about, at least with respect to if you're already there, are people who are already there and not registered. So there's certainly provisions for that to say, excuse me, if you're not registered when you're there, and now you have to register because you're passing the 30 days, go through the process and do that. Normally what happens is they indicate how long you're going to be staying. And when you do that, then you're locked in for that period of time. So let's say that you've got a 3-year work authorization, then you're registered for the entire 3 years. So one of the things, again, that you can check, because the normal registration, if you had one for a visitor, would be through the I-94 system, is you can just check on your I-94 to see when that expires.
Well, speaking of snowbirds, we may have some people that want to fly away when they look at the forecast, because if you're not a human, if you're a dog looking to go out for that dog walk, those booties likely going right back on.
Caroline was talking about the pants that she has for her dog for the messy weather, the booties for the cold weather, the sweater for the cold weather as well. You might need all of that at some point.
Bring it all out.
Yeah, bring it all out. Keep it all out for the next week at least, because things are changing. Have a look at our dog walking forecast for your Wednesday. So, tomorrow we start fairly similar to today. A few clouds in the morning. Regardless of the weather, I think Skemp probably enjoys it, whatever. Thanks, Michelle, for sending this picture. And you can keep sending your pictures to talkback@cbc.ca. I'd love to see your pets. I love seeing them in the inbox every morning when I get into work. So please keep them coming. -8 first thing in the morning. Few clouds. We'll start to get some clearing as we get through the day tomorrow. So a mix of sun and clouds by afternoon. And as we get onto the warm side of that jet stream, our temperature pops up to +3 through the afternoon and really staying right around 2-3 degrees into the evening. So tomorrow evening, a lovely evening for a walk, but that freeze thaw is happening. So we are looking at probably some messy conditions tomorrow. Don't forget the bug wash, or the washer fluid, I should say, as you're maybe leaving for work tomorrow. So here's that little bit of snow that's making its way south of the border, traveling along the jet stream. But I want to tell you about what's happening on the west coast, because we're looking at another atmospheric river event impacting parts of Vancouver Island and the south coast of British Columbia. 30-40 millimeters of rain possible throughout the week. So we're looking at a very wet week ahead on the south coast of BC and on Vancouver Island as well. So noting that's happening to the west of us. Overnight tonight, temperatures around -10 once again in the west. A few flurries. These do taper off as we get through the evening tonight. In Winnipeg, a slight chance of flurries. Better chance, though, along the international border. -8 tonight in Emerson, -17s through the Pas and Flin Flon. And again, another night in northern Manitoba, where we're looking at temperatures close to -30 once again overnight, as we are kind of stuck in northern Manitoba, anywhere north of Thompson, really, in that cold pocket of Arctic air. A little bit of instability through northern Manitoba tomorrow. Maybe you get a dusting of snow through the morning into the early afternoon hours, getting up to the -single digits, -9 in Island Lake tomorrow. In the south, mix of sun and clouds to start. I mean, a cloudier start, but once we get into the day, we'll get a little bit of clearing going here. So even by lunchtime, looking at temperatures close to freezing in Brandon and Verdun at -3. And by the afternoon, looking at temperatures popping up above zero. Dauphin at 0, +3 in Winnipeg and Brittany, looking at temperatures at freezing as well into northwestern Ontario.
Thank you, Riley.
You're welcome.
Well, the sport of broomball is often overshadowed by hockey, but for some small towns, it's still their claim to fame. Nicole Laverne-Smith takes us to a small village in Saskatchewan that's punching well above its weight.
Like every week in the winter in this town of about 300 people, the Debden Roadrunners jump on the ice for their broomball practice. The precision, communication, and most of all, the energy of these young athletes stands out. 2, 3, the broom, the specialized shoes on ice, this sport is unique. But what makes this team so good? With 3 Canadian under-20 championships in a row, Hayden Peterson says it comes down to strategy and being on the same page.
We are an incredibly smart team, and we are such a well-bonded team that we can just all move together in one. Like, our minds all think alike, and it's just like we're all connected. Like, sometimes we don't even have to call the ball. They're just there when they need to be. Like, you just know.
She's going to try to block the pass if she can. So
Dean Demers, one of their coaches, agrees, but also gives credit to their athleticism and grit.
First of all, the girls are really talented. They're really good athletes. They got a lot of skill, and they work hard for everything they got.
Broomball is also part of the culture here in Debden. Most of the Roadrunners started playing the sport at a young age.
So we've had kids and adults playing broomball here for, 40, 50 years. So it's been a part of the Debden culture for a long time. And everybody who lives here has grown up with broomball. And yeah, it's just something we do around here.
Many of the athletes, like Peyton Turner, have family members that play the sport.
Past generations have always passed down broomball to generations now, and it's almost like you're not meant for broomball, but broomball is meant for you.
Broomball has deep roots here. According to this book written about the history of the sport in the province, the first reference to broomball being played in North America was of it being played right here in Saskatchewan. The Saskatoon Daily Phoenix wrote about the game being played in the town of Purdue in 1909. Even though it's popular in towns like Debden, the lack of ice time in the cities and the decline of the rural population has been very challenging for broomball. The small number of teams in the province means these athletes have to travel quite far to play. But players like Avery Seah have hope and want to see it grow.
I hope it keeps going. I would want to see my kids playing broomball because I think it's a really fun and kind of unique sport too.
In a few weeks, they will be in Val d'Or, Quebec to defend their title. They've lost a few key players lately, and the competition will be intense.
The first couple times we went, we were just the Saskatchewan team that had never won before. So this year, you know, everybody's gonna know who the Debden Roadrunners are.
It's gonna be tough. Like, the competition there is so much more than in Saskatchewan. But with that being said, I do think we are the smartest team that there is. So if we put that in all our plays, we can win.
Nicole Laverne-Smith, CBC News, Debden.
Still ahead, fighting extreme heat with paint. We'll show you how next. Plus, Riley has a last check on our chilly forecast. Stay with us. A scientific trial is testing a simple strategy for fighting extreme heat. It's painting the roof white, reflecting light and heat back to the sky. The study spans several countries. This tin roof shantytown is in India, where the heat hits 46 degrees. Indoor temperatures and residents' health are also being monitored. Heat waves that happened once every 10 years before the Industrial Revolution are now 3 times as likely.
Well, not looking at heat like that here, but certainly looking at some above seasonal conditions as we get into the next several days across southern Manitoba. 3 degrees through the afternoon tomorrow, a mix of sun and clouds, kind of like today, although in reverse. We'll start to get that clearing as we get later in the day as opposed to starting a bit sunnier. Light breeze tomorrow, southwest winds gusting up to 30 through the afternoon, if that. I'm saying southwest 10 to 20, so I do expect a bit of a breeze. 4 degrees for Thursday into Friday. That's when we'll see that transition, some rain in the afternoon over to snow into the evening hours. Notice we drop our temperature from +4 to -14 by Saturday morning. -8 for the day on Saturday, -6 for Sunday and Monday. A little bit of precipitation yet to come on Monday, and -4 on the way for Tuesday. Well, a 12-year-old girl from Moose Jaw, Saskatchewan has started a small business.
It's all for a good cause and might leave you feeling a little more fresh. Here's your Daily Lift. Sydney Eberly runs Simply Scrubs. She and her grandma make body scrubs to sell to people. The proceeds from the sales go directly to local charities. Eberly says she sells anywhere from just a few scrubs to more than 20 in the span of a month, and she's donated to many places.
We haven't done this month yet, but a few months ago, we did the pediatric, for pediatric beds at the Moose Jaw Hospital. And then sometimes we do the Providence Place and Humane Society, and it's really nice to be able to donate.
So get this, Eberly has so far donated over $500. She says not only does she feel good about donating that money, but it's also fun to spend time with her grandma.
It's a win-win.
It is a win-win for everybody
And I
involved.
bet you grandma likes that too.
And you get some body scrub out of it.
Right?
So,
Why not?
There you go.
I bet you she uses those as holiday gifts too. That's
stocking
a good
stuffers. That's a good stocking
It's a great
stuffers.
idea.
Absolutely.
That's it for us tonight. We'll see you back here tomorrow.
Have a good one.